By the way, I understand that you were an aspiring fiction writer. I see why.
Oh, yeah. Well, I understand your view that you can cut half of the agency and it won't affect people's health or their water, their air. That, to me, is a big fiction, Mr. Zeldin.
You've forgotten about the fact of cleaning up
I have to
the
think,
LA
Mr. Zeldin,
wildfires.
I think, Mr. Zeldin, if your children were drinking water, if your children were drinking water in Santa Ana, Mr. Zeldin, maybe you wouldn't be so cavalier about whether there was lead in their water. Maybe you would give a damn instead of coming in here and suggesting that any grant that takes lead out of the water must be waste, fraud, or abuse because you need the money for a tax cut for rich people because you're totally beholden to the oil industry.
Welcome to America Viewpoint, where we speak the truth, defend our freedoms, and fight for the values that made this nation great. No censorship, no woke spin, just bold, unfiltered commentary from real Americans who love this country. If you're tired of the lies and ready to stand for faith, family, and freedom, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the Liberty Bell, because this is where the fight begins. Today's video breaks down a fiery exchange in Congress that you need to see to believe. California Congressman Adam Schiff, yes, that Adam Schiff, launched into a long-winded, emotionally charged tirade against EPA Administrator Zeldin. And at the center of his outrage, President Trump's efforts to drain the swamp, to cut bloated budgets, eliminate wasteful grants, and return power to the people, not the bureaucrats. But instead of a real debate, Schiff unleashed a smear campaign. He called Zeldin's reforms a legacy of cancer, accused him of poisoning America's children, and, in perhaps the most dramatic moment, mocked him as an aspiring fiction writer. Folks, when the left runs out of facts, they go for the fiction. And today, we're going to break it all down, piece by piece.
The gentleman from California, Mr. Schiff, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Zeldin, you've only been at the EPA for a few months, but in that time, you've done more to dismantle this agency than probably all of your predecessors put together. That may be a source of pride for you, but it is not for the American people. You've unlawfully terminated grants without justification. You've fired and pushed out some of the best scientists who inform EPA's decision-making. You refuse to spend money that Congress has appropriated to the EPA by law. And you've launched a pro-polluter effort to delete dozens of environmental protections. On top of all this, you've launched an effort to overturn California's Clean Air Act waivers that improve the quality of air breathed by 40 million Californians and by millions more in other states who have adopted California's high standards. That effort, for which my colleagues have decided to eliminate the filibuster to achieve, is not exactly what anyone would call cooperative federalism. But it's your budget that's the ultimate proof of your priorities. You propose cutting America's environmental agency by 55%, meaning that in your view and that of President Trump, more than half of the environmental efforts of the EPA, more than half of the efforts to make sure Americans have clean air and clean water are just a waste. They're just a waste. Meaning that Californians and people all over the country, when they breathe the air, thanks to your good work, it'll mean there's more diesel and more other particulate matter in the air. When they drink a glass of water, they may not be able to see it, but this water that Americans drink is going to have more chemicals like PFAS, forever chemicals in their water. This will be your good work. I want to be very specific about the legacy you're going to leave if you're successful in eliminating half of our efforts to clean our water and our air. Your legacy will be more lung cancer. It'll be more bladder cancer. It'll be more head and neck cancer. It'll be more breast cancer. It'll be more leukemia and pancreatic cancer, more liver cancer, more skin cancer, more kidney cancer, more testicular cancer, more colorectal cancer, more rare cancers of innumerable varieties. That will be your legacy. I don't know that that's a legacy that anyone should want to have. My kids are going to be breathing that air just like yours. My family's going to be drinking the water just like yours. We may not be able to pinpoint just who gets cancer because you've done away with half the budget of those looking out for our clean water and clean air. But it's going to be somebody's kids, it's going to be somebody's family. To put this in more specific terms, there are 22 grants frozen by the EPA focused on improving health and reducing pollution, many of which directly impact children. For example, one project in Santa Ana, California, provided funding to help detect and prevent lead poisoning in children. According to the census, about 10% of the population in Santa Ana are under the age of 9. With a population of about 310,000 people, that means that 31,000 children are at risk of lead poisoning in Santa Ana without this funding. What is it about this grant that you and EPA believe is problematic enough to freeze this funding and put potentially 31,000 children at risk?
Senator, who is the grant applicant?
This is to the city of Santa Ana.
You have the biggest,
And are
you have the
you-
biggest
are you-
state, so
and
we're
are
going to have to
you-
go through every single list of the grant.
Well,
By the way, with that wind up, by the way, I understand that you were an aspiring fiction writer. I see why.
Oh, yeah. Well, I understand your view that you can cut half of the agency and it won't affect people's health or their water, their air. That, to me, is a big fiction, Mr. Zeldin.
You've
and
forgot about the fact
if
of cleaning up
I have
after
to
the
think,
LA
Mr. Zeldin,
wildfires
I think,
or
Mr.
president when I
Zeldin,
was in San Diego.
if your children were
With the
drinking
Tijuana
water,
River sewage crisis,
if your
apparently we're
children
going
were
out on our
drinking
own for
water
that.
in Santa Ana, Mr. Zeldin, maybe you wouldn't be so cavalier about whether there was lead in their water. Maybe you would give a damn instead of coming in here and suggesting that any grant that takes lead out of the water must be waste, fraud, or abuse because
The
you
gentleman's
need
time has
because
expired.
you
Who said
need
that? The whole
the
thing,
money for a
everything
tax
you
cut
said,
for rich people
your time. It's all
because
make-believe.
you're totally beholden to the oil industry.
The
You could give-
gentleman's
you could
time-
give- You could give a rat's ass about how much
is.
cancer
Because
your agency
you're trying to
causes.
destroy.
The
Impeach,
gentleman's
resist.
time has expired.
Let's start with the bigger picture. What was this hearing really about? It was supposed to be a congressional oversight session where EPA Administrator Zeldin explained the Trump administration's environmental policy priorities, including cutting the EPA's bloated budget, refocusing efforts on actual environmental threats, and ensuring federal agencies don't overstep their constitutional authority. But instead, Schiff used his time not to ask questions, but to grandstand, scold, and attack. He opened by claiming Zeldin had done more to dismantle the EPA in a few months than any predecessor. To that, many patriots across this country would say good, because dismantling the deep state's grip on regulatory power is exactly what this country needs. Do we want clean air and water? Of course. Every American wants that. But what we don't want is bloated, unelected agencies pushing radical agendas, weaponizing environmental regulations against farmers, small business owners, and energy workers. That's not protecting the planet. That's government overreach. Schiff accused Zeldin of firing top scientists and refusing to spend money Congress appropriated. Think about that for a second. The left wants to trap us in a system where bureaucrats are untouchable and taxpayer dollars are spent whether they work or not. Zeldin's job is to ensure those funds are used wisely, not blindly. But Schiff wasn't done. He launched into a dramatic doomsday scenario, saying Zeldin's budget cuts would result in more lung cancer, breast cancer, leukemia, you name it. He listed nearly every cancer known to man. Why? Because fear-mongering is all the left has left. Where's the evidence for any of this? He didn't cite peer-reviewed studies or scientific assessments. He just threw out diseases like confetti at a parade. It's emotional manipulation, not serious policy critique. And here's the part they won't show you on CNN. Zeldin dared to challenge Schiff's narrative. When Schiff accused him of undermining public health, Zeldin calmly, but directly, replied, with that wind-up. I understand you were an aspiring fiction writer. I see why. Boom. That wasn't an insult. It was a rebuttal. It was a pushback against a smear campaign dressed up as concern. Because Schiff wasn't making policy arguments. He was spinning a story. And Zeldin called it out. Now let's look at Schiff's most emotional claim. That without EPA grants, children in Santa Ana, California, specifically 31,000 kids, are at risk of lead poisoning. Now listen, no one wants kids drinking contaminated water. But here's the real question. Is government funding the only solution? Is every local issue solved by a federal grant? Santa Ana has a city council, a mayor, and a state government, all controlled by Democrats. Where are they in protecting their communities? And why should the EPA be pressured to rubber stamp every grant application without oversight or review? This is the problem with the left's thinking. They don't believe in local responsibility. They don't believe in accountability. And they certainly don't believe in efficiency. They believe in endless spending and blaming Washington whenever their utopian plans fail. Schiff took it a step further, accusing Zeldin of gutting grants to fund tax cuts for rich people. There it is, the classic class warfare card. Here's what Schiff won't say. Tax cuts mean you keep more of your paycheck. Tax cuts revive our economy, create jobs, and lift families out of poverty, not bureaucratic handouts. And let's talk about energy. Zeldin is working under a president who put American energy first, who rolled back unnecessary red tape, made us energy independent, and stood up to globalist environmental groups that wanted to kneecap our economy in the name of climate virtue signaling. Schiff and his allies, on the other hand, want to bury us in Green New Deal nonsense, destroy reliable energy jobs, and make America dependent on foreign oil again. When Zeldin and the Trump administration fight back against that agenda, the left calls it pro-polluter, but we call it pro-American, because prosperity and clean energy can coexist if you trust innovation, not regulation. Now, perhaps the most revealing moment came at the end, when Schiff abandoned all pretense and accused Zeldin of being indifferent to children's health, saying he wouldn't give a damn if kids were drinking lead-contaminated water. That's not debate. That's not oversight. That's a smear. You see, this is what they do. If you question a grant, if you demand accountability, if you believe in smaller government, suddenly you don't care about kids. It's disgraceful. And frankly, it's un-American. Here's the truth. Conservatives do care about children. We care about their education, their future, their safety, and yes, their health. But we also care about the truth, about spending money wisely, about limiting government, and about freedom. Because freedom, not federal micromanagement, is what built this country. So what did we just witness? A sitting member of Congress, Adam Schiff, using his platform not to seek truth, not to demand answers, but to grandstand, scold, and demonize an EPA administrator for doing his job, cutting waste, returning power to local communities, and standing firm for common sense reforms. He called Zeldin's efforts a legacy of cancer and accused him of being indifferent to children's suffering, simply because he wouldn't rubber stamp a bloated environmental budget. And when Zeldin responded with a calm, cutting remark that Schiff was sounding like a fiction writer, the left lost their minds. But let's be clear, the only fiction here is the narrative that more government equals better outcomes, that more spending equals more compassion, and that anyone who questions the bureaucracy must be evil. That's not leadership, that's emotional blackmail. And the American people are waking up. This is America Viewpoint, where we don't whisper, we roar. We stand tall, speak loud, and never back down from defending truth and liberty. If this message fired you up, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications, because the fight for America doesn't end when the video does. Until next time, stay strong, stay free, and may God bless the United States of America.